So they're saying some companies discriminate against Black job applicants more than others. I guess this quote unquote new report finds. But we all know this ain't new news. But I guess in this video they're going to show a couple of the companies that they caught doing it more significantly than others. It's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy. Please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.
A new report suggests some of the nation's biggest companies are discriminating against Black job applicants. In the largest of its kind study, a group from the National Bureau of Economic Research sent out 80,000 resumes to 97 companies over a 3-year span between 2019 and 2021. They used fake resumes, but with equal qualifications, changing only personal details to imply an applicant's race, age, and gender. Overall, researchers found employers contacted white applicants more than Black ones, with the widest gap being between.
There it is, AutoNation and GPC. So these two companies, 43% more with AutoNation and 33% more often with GPC. Contacted white applicants more than Black. So I'm gonna look these up here on my own time. I'm gonna look these up. See, I ain't never heard of them, so don't really too much matter to me. But the companies are out there doing this.
Companies Genuine Parts and AutoNation. So far, neither company has responded to our requests for comment. However, Genuine Parts did tell the New York Times, quote, "We are always evaluating our practices to ensure inclusivity and break down barriers, and we will continue to do so."
And this looks like a copy and paste response that they all say. They're not doing anything to ensure that this doesn't happen. So don't know why they, I guess it's just the look of it.
So AutoNation did not respond to the New York Times. Let's bring in Evan Rose now. He is a co-author of this report and is an assistant economics professor at the University of Chicago. Evan, great to have you with us on this topic. I'm just wondering, from your point of view, with all the research you've done, what were the most significant findings and what it tells us about the U.S. labor market as a whole?
Great, yeah, thanks so much for having me. So this was a huge study, as you mentioned. We sent thousands and thousands of resumes to many hundreds of companies. And I think the most important thing that we learned from the study is that companies seem to really differ in the extent to which they discriminate based on the characteristics that we're looking at, which is both race and gender. You highlighted the fact that 2 companies appeared to discriminate much more than the other companies in our study. I think it's also important to recognize that some companies appeared to discriminate quite a bit less or even not at all in our study. It's just massive heterogeneity in the economy and the extent to which we see this discrimination against distinctively Black names. Now, importantly,
I'd like to know the companies that don't discriminate at all. Hopefully they show that here. I'd want to see that report. Just curious which companies we might want to be able to look at if the data is accurate.
That discrimination doesn't seem to be random. It's concentrated in particular industries. For race discrimination, for example, firms that do things with cars and car parts like AutoNation and Genuine Parts, which owns the Napa Auto Parts brand, seem to discriminate much more than firms in other industries, including industries like food stores and grocery stores, for example. So we think this is important because I think it means, first of all, there might be something we could do about this from an enforcement perspective. We also think it might mean that there are things firms can do themselves that might mitigate or exacerbate the type of discrimination that you could see in their organization. The fact that all firms don't seem to discriminate in the same way suggests that this is just an inevitable feature of the labor market, that there's going to be discrimination out there always. Instead, it may be that policies and practices that firms can adopt, how they structure hiring, the type of training they give people, might actually have an impact on these measures. And we hope that by releasing these data, we can start to learn some of those policies and practices and share those across firms in a way that can help reduce the type of discrimination that we're seeing here. here?
It's a fascinating study, extensive research that you've done. We mentioned areas in which were more likely to discriminate, which companies and which areas were less likely.
Yeah, so we see less discrimination on the basis of race against our distinctively Black names in these fictional applications we sent. In the food store industries, which I mentioned earlier, you can think about that like grocery stores. We see less discrimination in freight and transport, which include companies like FedEx and UPS, as well as some in
Definitely service-based. I mean, that's where we look at that: food stores, food products, freight and transportation, wholesale. That's where we at for sure.
other utility companies and communications companies like Charter.
But if you think about it, these areas here don't generally pay the most, you know. So of course they're going to be, you know, flooded with African Americans in terms of employees.
And spectrum. So again, it's not a universal phenomenon. It's not sort of inevitable.
And then they got the young picture with the young Black kid as the cashier, which isn't a problem to me. I mean, when you're young, you taking anything you can get. You know, it's just that we're not trying to stay there for the rest of our lives because financially, economically, that's not going to be the best move career wise.
That there's going to be discrimination in the types of job we're studying here. It does seem to have strong concentration in particular firms and among firms that are concentrated in these particular industries.
We got a list with lowest. Okay. Hey, I used to work at FedEx. Yeah, it was a terrible time, but I worked there when I was out of high school. When I first got out of high school, I didn't work at Lowe's, but I worked at Home Depot. And yeah, I mean there was a lot of African Americans at both actually in the departments that I worked in. I tried to work at Dr. Pepper. They didn't hire me. I think that's it. Waste management would actually be pretty good. They pay pretty well from what I understand. I'm not sure. Charter would pay pretty decently as well.
And again, for our viewers, the resumes were identical. The qualifications and the skills were the same. It was the personal information that you changed. How then, if companies are watching this, people who can actually impact change, what can companies do to address discrimination and extinguish this type of behavior?
Yeah, that's a great question, and hopefully something that we can continue to work on in future research. The short answer is we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes at these companies. We see what our experiment is establishing is that companies do differ in the extent of discrimination that they exhibit as measured in an experiment like ours. We have some clues about what policies and practices might matter here, including things like how centralized their HR operation seems to be. Some companies, it seems that many individuals are involved in making hiring decisions at a single establishment. So it might be 4 or 5 different people calling back job applications at one store. At other companies, it looks like there might be just one person who's overseeing hiring for a couple different stores across a broader set of establishments. And what we infer from that is that it seems like companies where maybe they've invested a little bit more in professionalizing the hiring function and offered some kind of training, maybe that's one way in which you can mitigate the type of discrimination that you'd measure in a study like ours. But one of the reasons why we wanted to do this project and release these names and talk about which companies are actually in our list is to open the way for other researchers and policymakers and everyone to dig into what policies and practices really do seem to differ across these firms and think about what we can learn about how to address this problem at a more systematic level.
Yeah, it's a sobering report, but hopefully it's just part of a step in the right direction. Evan Rose, we really appreciate you discussing your findings with us, joining us from Chicago.
Yeah, but they're not going to do anything about it. We know that. But I appreciate the report. I think I'm going to say throughout my entire career, I've always heard of heard of this report, I guess. So it's not necessarily new, but I'm glad that they keeping their foot on these companies' necks in a sense of outing them when they can. The the companies just aren't doing it. They're not really doing anything different. It's clear as day. Fortunately, I have a name that is racially ambiguous, or I won't even say racially ambiguous. My name is straight up white. So they don't typically know what I look like until I get in there, really. And then sometimes I can see it on their face. They like, oh shit, he's tall, he's black as hell. So but these days they still can figure it out through LinkedIn and social media of any kind. That they can find you and figure out, and then they can make their decision based on what they see. So for me, I don't try to hide it on my LinkedIn. I always tell people I would rather a company just flat out not hire me due to my race than kind of hire me just because they run out of time and they didn't know I was black, and or they hire me because I'm black and then treat me wrong while I'm in there. So I don't try to hide my LinkedIn. I wear my blackness proud when I have stepped into interviews in the past, and I think that's just the best way to do it. Hire me, know that I'm black, and hire me regardless. Then hire me on for some other reason, and then it's just a bad situation because you're uncomfortable. I'm there, and I'm mad that you wasted my time. So, but I appreciate this report. It's like I said, we're keeping our foots on their necks with these types of reports. So be aware. If you're out there putting in job applications, be aware. This type of stuff is still happening if you didn't know. It's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.